Well, howdy ho there, folks. How are we doing today? Hopefully, you're all doing absolutely peachy keen, fantastic, wonderful, lots of hugs and love. Today, we get to go through one of my least favorite parts of the game, which is the big castle. The big castle is certainly something. I don't really think it's like the worst. I just think that I don't really like the gimmick. They have this gimmick in the castle where you have to kill guys next to these like petrified giant things to activate them long enough so that they can turn a lever or do whatever they're gonna do and stuff like that. Um, I think they're probably oh, and this is funny. I actually ended up having to go back because I was like, wait a minute, is this the right way? Because I couldn't remember because it's been a while since I've been there. Um, and yeah, the lady says that you're blessed with the myriad of souls, and then you can go to the thing. Because I beat all of the, or at least the four big bosses that you have to beat before you get to the final area type deal. And yeah, I will say that I think something that's kind of interesting is that I'm really enjoying being a wizard, and I'm enjoying being a wizard so much I have a hat. Isn't that neat? But I was really enjoying being a wizard. And I was really enjoying all the different things I was able to do, all the spells I was casting, and things like that. Sometimes I felt like I wasn't doing quite enough damage, and I had to cast more spells than I wanted to on an individual. But honestly, it wasn't really like that bad. And I ended up like revisiting some of it, and I realized that I was actually doing perfectly fine. Um, And honestly, I think a lot of these wouldn't be that difficult. It's more that just that there's like a lot of different guys in these places, and that's kind of what ends up being the thing that makes things like more difficult. Basically, I ran all the way here to this thing, and I killed a couple of guys in front of this so that the gate would open, and then I ended up rolling around trying not to be killed by the invader. Um, this game, I think part of what makes it the spellcasting more difficult is that if you don't have enough, if they don't do enough damage, see that there's just like a lot of guys. Now, of course, I'm doing two spells, and two spells is good. That's not too bad, certainly. But things do definitely start to feel more tanky around this area, and this is where the difficulty kind of increases a little bit, but it's also kind of like you don't actually have to do that much to deal with a lot of the enemies, and you can really end up getting by surprisingly well. A lot of it is actually ends up being maneuvering and being able to like go to different locations and run around and do stuff like that. Also, it's kind of funny because this is a very big hat, and I had to change the FOV to get the whole hat onto the screen. Isn't it nice though? Isn't it lovely? But yeah, we ended up kind of running around, killing some of the invaders, and doing all kinds of stuff. This is also an area that has this interesting little thing going on where it's like they really, really want you to have these like really long elevator rides, but we'll get to that when we get to that. It was also kind of interesting because I noticed that with all these pillars and stuff around, it seemed like I could really easily kind of confuse the NPCs that I was fighting against and just confuse a lot of them in general. Um, or like if you back up enough, like sometimes for some reason they'll just run straight into the pillar and just like sit there. I'm not 100% sure why exactly they do that. Um, but yeah, there's a bunch of invasions and stuff like that in these areas, and thankfully, even though my poise isn't the greatest, they tend not to actually interrupt me unless they're like a really big attack or like one of the great sword guys. Oh, those guys definitely interrupted me. Um, and I think that one of the main thing, there's also kind of the weird thing, I'm sorry, just completely distracted. I always notice this. For some reason, you leave footprints everywhere. I don't know if it's because there's supposed to be just like a ton of dustiness or whatever. Oh, I died multiple times in this room. I ran in there and I accidentally unleashed two of the ruined sentinels. But then I realized that I opened the right door and I was just like, okay, screw it, we're just booking it forward. Those rooms get really irritating because you just end up having to do the same thing, like with the killing the guys next to the statue, so they'll open the doors and stuff like that. Um, Not necessarily the most challenging, but it can definitely get a little annoying with the way that ends up being because especially as a spellcaster, it's like, okay, I gotta plan my attacks a little bit and I need a little bit of range and stuff like that. And then I was gonna open them and then it was like, okay, never mind, I guess we're getting arrowed. And I'll probably go back to that later or something like that. Here's the Dark Queen lady who ends up doing all of the darkness things. That's the one that marries the guy that we find later on. Oh, not in this video, but we'll find him later. But yeah, after a while, I was just like, okay, I guess I'm just gonna move forward and just ignore everybody because after a while, it was like I don't really feel like attacking each individual guy just to get through. There she is. You can talk to the queen lady. I don't care. She's just gonna sit there and be dark, and if you spend too much time around her, she does darkness on you and curses you and things. But I'm like not into that, dog. Not into that. I think there's the big thing behind me supposed to be like a brazier or something. I'm not 100% sure. Um, but yeah, they also I can't remember if this is in the original game, but I know it's in Scholar where we get the little summon, and this really helps out with this fight. Honestly, I think that this fight, I think one of the issues a lot of people have with the design of bosses in Dark Souls Scholar of the First Sin has a lot to do with the fact that a lot of them are just dudes like this, or they're just like basically big dudes in armor, and that's not necessarily the worst ever. I just think it gets a little bit tiresome, especially like these guys here. It's like the same boss you've already fought earlier, but now there's just two of them. And that's not necessarily, like I said, I don't necessarily think that's the worst thing ever, and I understand you might have a limited design, so it can be very beneficial to just um, use the stuff you got. And honestly, I mean, I think the Dragon Riders are a cool enough design. I just don't necessarily. I wish there was a little bit more variety in the bosses. I feel like in Dark Souls 2 in particular, we get a lot of, and then there was a dude in armor, and then there was a dude in armor, and then there was a dude in armor, which, feels a little bit, not necessarily the greatest, not necessarily the worst either. I think that for a lot of this stuff, we just kind of end up getting, similar. I do think that their armor looks overall pretty cool. I think the big teardrop shield is kind of a little weird to have when you have full plate armor. But hey, they're not basing it on being realistic. They're basing it on being cool. They're basing it on having these cool designs that we'll remember later on. But I do think that we end up getting a lot of pretty interesting little designs as well. Like I think that these kind of headless assassin guys, these weird mannequin Zucati Manicotti looking guy. Also, this was the thing that I kept having an issue with. The Staff of Wisdom is so tall that if they were close to me, it would cast over their head almost every time. But it's okay, we got it. We unlocked the thing. I do think the giant design in this is also kind of interesting. Just like these weird things with big holes in their heads and all that. This is kind of interesting. I think that's pretty cool, actually. But yeah, the castle is also not actually super long. If you know where you're going, you know what you're doing. It's really not that long. I think there's a lot of areas where they try to kind of extend it, but if you just sort of move through and do things, I think you get through pretty quickly. And honestly, though, it would probably be a lot longer if I stopped and fought every single enemy, but I'm just not going to do that. I mean, getting the souls is nice, and because I no longer have an Estus flask because of my oopsie. Oh man, it's funny. Because I no longer have an Estus flask, I mean, I end up relying more on life gems. But honestly, I got just a ton of life gems on me by the end of the video, so it's like, okay, it's really not a big a deal. And honestly, I mean, the Estus flask is nice because it heals so fast, but it's also like not like the most important thing to have. There's also just this executioner horse thing here, which is kind of interesting. I don't. Yeah, I guess I didn't actually go. Or did I? I can't even remember if we went and fought this boss. I think we may have, but yeah, no, I think we did. But yeah, no, the executioner's chariot is like, and the fact that it's just like an evil horse is the actual boss is just kind of funny to me. Um, yeah, and it's also kind of weird because I feel like there's probably some story reason for this thing to be here. I just don't know what exactly it is. This would be a cool undead mount, though, if you were like a big vampire or something, I think. But, although that bone's going right into your groin seems like it wouldn't be so pleasant. Um, but for a lot of things, it ends up being a pretty easy area to get through. Oh, that's like weird. Why does that look so slow? Oh, that's kind of weird. Um, oh well, is what it is, I suppose. Okay, if it seems to fix itself, I don't know what exactly is going on. Also, I thought it was funny. There's these two ladies right here, but if you just stand on these stairs, that one just can't get you at all. But she just sits there and wants to cast spells at you. If you get the one on the left, where she dies, and then you don't really have any issues. Um, and it has been, it's pretty little fun area in some ways to go through if you want to go through quickly. I personally just found it a little bit more tedious as a spellcaster because it's harder to get the guys to stand in a position long enough to get them to go into the giant things that are going to turn your levers and stuff like that. Oh, and that just ended up going around. I guess I should have left that just slightly longer, but that's okay. We also end up having areas like this, which this is what I was talking about, just this weirdly long elevator. And you end up coming back to this area later if you want to get some quest stuff and to help out, but I mean, honestly, it's just like, why is the elevator so long? But we do get this. It's a cool Silent Hill person to block the door. And it's blocking a pretty lady with a dress inside of there. So if you're into that, I mean, I guess there's that. Actually, when we see how big the king is later, I don't even think he could fit in this room very easily. Or on that elevator. Or through most of the doors. It almost makes you think that maybe it's not actually designed for him. Maybe it's just designed for random walkabouts. Although it is a lot of stone, and the stones are pretty. I do like that stone. Although that really seems like the kind of thing that I should have in a beach house, so that I can, yeah, and also make Silent Hill noises, so that I can, run around and have fun, in a beach house, splashing in the water and things like that. That's always a lot of fun, I think. We also end up, this is one of the areas where I kind of sort of had a strategy of just running through, but it didn't quite work. So I get to the door. I'm like, okay, go through the door, and then the horse people just start kicking me and hitting me with spears. It's very rude. Ow! They do a lot of damage to me. I'm very squishy, but that's okay. See, now we have the 99 life gems, and I got 99 life gems, but an SS ain't one. I guess. But yeah, it's also kind of interesting because recently I've been playing a mage in Elden Ring and comparing it to this. I'm not sure if I like just having the cast amount versus the FP, but I also don't necessarily think it's the worst. It's just kind of different. So certainly not that bad though. I still was enjoying myself and having fun either way, And then of course we have big horse people who want to run around and rule the world with their dark delights. And by their dark delights, I mean Turkish delight, a big box of it. Now we get to a fight that a lot of people can... Oh my gosh. Bonk. A lot of people think is pretty memorable. I think it's kind of interesting that there's just this dude just hanging out in the rain, just like, yeah, no, this is just where I live now, I guess. I just live in the rain. I'm guarding this for some reason. I'm sure I could find a Howdy video explaining exactly why there's a knight with toes on their armor defending this place. I mean, it is what it is. One of the reasons I have to worry about this boss is that his mirror shield will just throw whatever I throw back, and it's like, okay, well, that's not. He usually does a decent amount of damage with a lot of his attacks, so we have to be careful for that. With that. But it's okay because we have the ability to just stand back while Ashen Knight Boyd distracts him. And Ashen Knight Boyd was honestly doing great in this way. Like he seems to dodging most of the attacks, and he's a real asset. I would highly recommend getting Ashen Knight Boyd because look at him. He's just like, I don't even care about you being a big Mirror Knight. Although I did find it kind of weird that the Mirror Knight didn't just do more like regular melee attacks and kept doing like that. Because it didn't even seem like it was working very well, but you know, hey, it's what happens when you have an NPC as the boss for a fight. Oh, I also did something kind of silly here where I accidentally ran across that and it ended up taking forever. And then this is the skip ahead. This is also a very, very long elevator sequence going down. But anyway, this is where we end up in the new area. The next area of the game, which is like, it's kind of interesting. It reminds me a little bit of like when you go and see the underneath the world and you see all of the different ash and mist and stuff like that, and the great trees which are holding up the world, which is kind of a cool little thing they got going on here. And there's definitely like a little bit of a callback to nature. I feel like there's a lot of areas that look like this in Dark Souls too, but I'm okay with that. I like the aesthetic. Anyway, here we are at the Shrine of Aeonia. Or no, Shrine of Amana, not Aeonia. Aeonia is in Caelid. Anyway, yeah, we end up coming back here and end up having a fun little time with our friends here in the water. I always also like watery areas, so you know. Anyway, thanks so much for stopping by, and yeah, I think we're gonna have some fun here next time. I hope that you all have an absolutely great one. And I hope you know that I love you and God loves you, and bye-bye, love you, bye. Have a great one. Wait for the wave. There it is. Okay, bye.